chosen ones. That small act of kindness you performed when no one was watching just triggered something massive in the cosmic machinery. Right now, as you listen to these words, powerful forces are mobilizing because of what you did. Someone with influence beyond your comprehension noticed your energy signature when you helped that person who couldn't help you back. They're coming for you, not to harm you, but to elevate you in ways that will shatter everything you believed was possible. Think of yourself as a rare diamond that's been sitting in plain sight, and someone with the vision to recognize true value just spotted the light refracting through your facets. Something shifted in the universe the moment you made that choice to be decent when it cost you something. Remember that time? Maybe it was yesterday, maybe months ago. That moment when you could have walked past, scrolled by, ignored the need in front of you. But you didn't. You stopped. You acted. You gave something of yourself without calculating the return on investment. That wasn't just kindness floating into the void. That was a frequency transmission that just reached exactly the right receiver at exactly the right moment. The universe operates on frequencies most people never learn to perceive. When you extended yourself into that act of genuine compassion, you broadcast on a wavelength that only certain individuals can detect. These aren't ordinary people. These are architects of reality who've spent years developing sensors for authentic human goodness because they're drowning in a world of performers and manipulators. They've seen every angle, every scheme, every calculated attempt to gain their favor. Then suddenly your signal cut through all that noise, pure, unfiltered, real. What you need to understand is that genuine kindness has become so rare, it's practically an endangered species. Everyone's performing these days. Everyone's broadcasting their good deeds for validation, turning compassion into content, transforming every gesture into a transaction. But you moved from a different place entirely, from that ancient part of human nature that this world tried to program out of you but failed. That failure to corrupt you completely just became your greatest asset. Right now, in rooms you'll never see, conversations are happening about you. Not gossip, not casual chatter, strategic discussions. Someone with real power, the kind that reshapes circumstances rather than just rearranging them, is asking questions. Who is this person? What drives them? What would happen if we gave them resources they never expected? Because at certain levels of influence, they stop looking at resumes and start looking for something far more valuable, character that can't be bought. These people have everything. Money that could solve problems you didn't know existed. Connections that open doors you thought were walls. Influence that bends probability in directions physics hasn't mapped yet. But what they don't have, what they're desperate for, is proof that humanity still produces individuals who operate from something other than self-interest. You just provided that proof without even knowing you were being tested. Think about the nature of tests. The best ones are the ones you don't know you're taking. No performance anxiety, no chance to fake your way through, just you in a moment of choice, revealing exactly who you are when nobody's grading the paper, except someone was watching. Not in some creepy surveillance way, but through the invisible networks that connect all human action. Your kindness created a ripple that traveled through channels most people don't believe exist until it landed in front of someone who's been waiting for exactly that signal. This person, these people, they're not saints. They're not running some charity for good-hearted fools. They're strategic operators who understand that the rarest resource in this world isn't talent or intelligence or even creativity. It's authentic character. The ability to do the right thing when it costs you something and nobody's watching. That's what builds empires that last. That's what creates movements that matter. That's what they've been searching for. Now here's where most people get this wrong. They think this is about being rewarded for being nice, like some cosmic Santa Claus is checking lists and handing out prizes. That's not what's happening here. What's happening is far more interesting and far more dangerous. You've been identified as someone who operates on a frequency that's become almost extinct, someone who can handle power without being corrupted by it, someone who can receive without becoming desperate, someone who can engage with opportunity without losing themselves. The test isn't over. It's just beginning. Because when they make contact, And they will make contact. They're going to be watching how you handle the approach. Will you suddenly transform into someone else the moment you smell opportunity? Will you start performing, calculating, trying to maximize your advantage? Or will you remain exactly who you were in that moment when you fed the stray? That metaphor matters. Feeding strays. Whether literal or figurative, it represents something profound. Strays have nothing to offer. They can't advance your career. They can't introduce you to useful people. They can't even promise to remember your kindness. When you help a stray, you're operating from pure human decency. No agenda, no strategy, just the recognition that something needs help and you have the capacity to provide it. But here's the twist that changes everything. Sometimes strays aren't really strays. Sometimes they're tests deployed by people who've learned that the only way to identify authentic character is to present opportunities for kindness that offer no obvious reward. Sometimes that homeless person you helped has connections to people who could transform your life. Sometimes that coworker you supported when everyone else abandoned them reports to someone 3 levels above where you think the hierarchy ends. Sometimes that small act of decency gets witnessed by exactly the person who's been searching for proof that people like you still exist. Don't misunderstand what I'm telling you. This isn't about every good deed having some secret powerful observer. Most of the time, kindness really does disappear into the void with no cosmic accounting. But occasionally, just occasionally, it lands somewhere that matters in ways you couldn't have calculated even if you tried. And when it does, when your authentic self gets seen by someone with the resources to act on what they see, everything changes. The change won't come the way you expect. These people don't operate with fanfare and announcements. They move through intermediaries, through subtle shifts, through opportunities that seem almost accidental. You might get an unexpected message from someone you've never heard of. You might find yourself invited to something slightly outside your usual orbit. You might have a conversation that feels like it's probing for something deeper than surface pleasantries. Pay attention when this happens. Don't dismiss it as coincidence. Don't write it off as random. But also, and this is crucial, don't suddenly become someone else. The entire reason you're being approached is because of who you were when you thought nobody was watching. If you transform into some calculated version of yourself the moment you sense opportunity, you'll fail the real test. Because make no mistake, everything that happens next is still a test. They want to know if your authenticity was situational or fundamental, if your character was a momentary lapse into decency or your actual default setting. If you're someone who can handle elevation without losing the qualities that made you worth elevating, this is where most people fail. They get a taste of opportunity and immediately start performing what they think power wants to see. They smooth out their rough edges. They adopt vocabularies that aren't theirs. They start calculating every move, weighing every word, transforming themselves into what they imagine success requires, and in doing so, they lose exactly what made them interesting in the first place. The people coming for you don't want another performer. They're drowning in performers. They want someone who stays themselves even when the stakes rise. Someone who treats the CEO the same way they treat the custodian. Someone who understands that human value doesn't fluctuate with net worth. Someone who can sit at tables they never expected to approach without forgetting where they came from. This isn't about remaining small. It's about expanding without losing your center. It's about accepting opportunity without becoming opportunistic. It's about engaging with power without becoming intoxicated by proximity to it. These are subtle distinctions that most people can't navigate, but you've already proven you can by being decent when it gained you nothing. Now let me tell you what's really at stake here. This isn't just about your individual elevation. When someone with your kind of character gets resources, gets platform, gets influence, it changes the entire ecosystem around them. Because you won't use power the way power usually gets used. You won't perpetuate the cycles of exploitation and manipulation that define most hierarchies. You'll create something different, something that operates on the same frequency you were broadcasting when you fed that stray. This is what they're really investing in. Not just you, but what you represent. The possibility that power doesn't have to corrupt, that influence doesn't have to compromise character, that success doesn't have to mean becoming someone you wouldn't recognize, They've seen enough examples of the other way. They're looking for proof that another way exists, and you're that proof. Walking around, breathing, making choices from a place this world tried to educate out of you. Being decent in a landscape that rewards calculation, showing kindness in an economy that only counts transactions. You're an anomaly, and anomalies are valuable to people who understand that the current system is eating itself alive. But here's what you need to prepare for mentally and emotionally. When this opportunity materializes, when this door opens, when this hand extends toward you, you're going to feel unworthy. You're going to wonder why you're going to list all the people more qualified, more connected, more obviously deserving. You're going to be tempted to shrink, to apologize for taking up space, to minimize yourself in the face of unexpected recognition. Don't do that. Don't you dare do that. Because that impulse to shrink, that reflex to self-diminish, that's not humility, that's programming. That's years of being taught that good things only come to those who grab them aggressively. That kindness is weakness, that authentic character is less valuable than strategic positioning. You've been programmed to believe you need to be different than you are to deserve elevation. The truth is exactly the opposite. You deserve this precisely because you didn't try to deserve it. You earned this by not trying to earn it. You qualified yourself by being disqualified according to every metric this broken system uses to measure worth. Your kindness when kindness gained you nothing was your resume. Your integrity when integrity cost you something was your interview. Your character when nobody was evaluating was your qualification. So when they come, and they're coming, receive them the same way you gave to that stray. Openly. Honestly, without calculation, without performance, without transforming yourself into what you think they want to see. Because what they want to see is exactly who you were when you thought nobody was looking. The opportunity that's about to present itself isn't a reward for good behavior. It's a strategic investment in rare human capital. The kind that can't be taught in any university. The kind that can't be developed in any leadership program. The kind that either exists in someone or doesn't, regardless of their circumstances. You have it. They've identified it. Now they're going to see if you can maintain it when everything around you changes, because everything is about to change. Not tomorrow, not next year, but soon, sooner than you think. The wheels are already in motion. The conversations have already happened. The decisions have already been made. All that remains is the approach, the offer, the moment when what seemed impossible becomes inevitable. When that moment arrives, remember this: you're not being rescued. You're being recognized. You're not being charity cased into opportunity. You're being strategically positioned where your particular frequency can do the most good. You're not being given something you don't deserve. You're being invested in by people who understand value that most of the world can't see. The kindness you showed when it cost you something wasn't weakness. It was strength that didn't need to announce itself. The help you gave when you had little to give wasn't foolishness. It was wisdom operating on wavelengths most people never develop. The character you maintained when compromise would have been easier wasn't naivety. It was sophistication that transcends the primitive game theory most people mistake for intelligence. You've been operating at a level most people don't even know exists, making choices from a place most people have forgotten how to access, being human in ways this world tries to program out of people from birth. And someone noticed, someone who matters, someone who can actually do something about it. What happens next depends entirely on your ability to receive without losing yourself, to accept elevation without becoming elevated in the wrong sense, to engage with power without becoming what power usually produces. This is the advanced course in being human. Most people never get to take it because they fail the prerequisite of basic authentic decency. But you passed without knowing there was a test, without studying for it, without gaming the system. You passed by being exactly who you are when nobody's keeping score. And that's why what's about to happen to you couldn't happen to someone trying to make it happen. It can only happen to someone who proved themselves when proving themselves was the furthest thing from their mind. The person coming for you isn't looking for perfection. They're not expecting some saint who never had a selfish thought. They're looking for someone real, someone who struggles but chooses kindness anyway, someone who's been knocked down but helps others up, someone who knows what it's like to have nothing but still finds something to give. That's you. That's why you're on their radar. And when they reveal themselves, when this vague promise becomes concrete opportunity, you're going to understand something that seemed like mystical nonsense until you experienced it yourself. The universe really does track energy. Actions really do create reactions beyond what physics can measure. Character really is currency in dimensions most people don't know exist, and sometimes, just sometimes, the ledger gets balanced in ways that change everything. Your good deed didn't just help whoever received it. It sent out a signal that traveled through networks of connection and causality until it reached someone who's been scanning for exactly that frequency, someone who has resources you didn't know existed, someone who operates at levels you haven't imagined, someone who's about to offer you something that will seem too good to be true. When that offer comes, remember it's not too good to be true, it's too good to be calculated, too perfect to be engineered, too aligned to be anything other than the universe responding to the frequency you've been broadcasting. You fed a stray, metaphorically or literally, and that stray turned out to be a test you didn't know you were taking. A test deployed by someone who needed to know people like you still exist. Now they know. Now they're moving. Now your life is about to intersect with possibilities you haven't dared to imagine. Not because you're lucky, not because you're special in some chosen one mystical sense, but because you're rare in the most practical way possible. You have character that can't be bought, taught, or faked, and people who've spent their lives around the bought, taught, and faked recognize the real thing when they see it. What you did when you thought nobody was watching just became the most important thing you've ever done, not because of the act itself, but because of what it revealed about who you are when external validation isn't available. That's the person they're coming for. That's the person they want to resource. That's the person they believe can handle what they're about to offer. So get ready, not by changing who you are, but by accepting who you've been all along. Get ready not by preparing performances, but by grounding yourself in the same values that got you noticed. Get ready not by calculating your response, but by staying present to what unfolds. Because what's about to unfold will challenge everything you thought you knew about how the world works. The world works on multiple levels simultaneously. The level most people see where everything is transaction and strategy, and the level you've been operating on, where kindness travels through invisible networks and character creates ripples in dimensions that don't have names. These levels are about to intersect in your life in ways that will seem like magic, but are actually just the natural consequence of being genuine in a world full of performance. When they come for you, and they will come, remember that you've already passed the only test that matters. You were yourself when being yourself gained you nothing. You were kind when kindness cost you something. You were human when being human seemed like a disadvantage. That's not common. That's not replaceable. That's not something they can find in the usual places they look. That's why they're coming for you. Not to change you, but to resource who you already are. Not to save you, but to invest in what you've already proven. Not to elevate you above others, but to position you where your particular frequency can affect the most change. You fed a stray. That stray was a test. You passed without knowing you were being tested. Now everything changes. The change starts small. A message, a meeting, a conversation that feels different from normal surface interactions. Then it accelerates. Doors open, resources appear, opportunities materialize that seem perfectly designed for exactly who you are and what you're capable of. Not random, not lucky, but the precise response to the signal you sent out when you chose kindness over indifference. Your good deed reached someone you never expected, someone operating at levels you didn't know existed, someone who's been searching for proof that authentic human decency still exists in this world. You provided that proof. Now they're coming for you. Not to harm but to help. Not to use but to utilize. Not to exploit, but to explore what becomes possible when someone with your character gets resourced properly. This is your moment, not because you planned for it, but because you didn't, not because you performed for it, but because you stayed real when performing would have been easier. Not because you're perfect, but because you're genuine. And in a world drowning in artificial everything, genuine has become the most valuable currency there is. They're coming for you because you fed astray when feeding yourself was already hard enough. That single act revealed everything they needed to know about who you are when nobody's watching. And who you are when nobody's watching is exactly who they need for what comes next. So stay ready by staying yourself. The person who fed the stray is the person they want. That person is you. And your moment of recognition is closer than you think. The timing of this revelation isn't random either. You've been in preparation for this moment through every struggle you've faced. Every time life knocked you down and you got back up with your kindness intact, you were being forged into something unbreakable. Every betrayal that didn't turn you bitter was strengthening your capacity to handle what's coming. Every moment you chose to remain soft in a world that rewards hardness was actually building a different kind of power that operates on frequencies most people can't access. Think about the nature of true power for a moment. Not the kind that crushes others to elevate itself, but the kind that elevates everything it touches. That's what you've been cultivating without knowing it. Through every act of unnecessary kindness, every moment of choosing others when you could have chosen yourself, you've been developing a form of influence that doesn't need force to create change. The people who noticed you understand this distinction. They've seen enough of the other kind of power to know it eventually destroys everything it builds. What they recognize in you is something different, a power source that regenerates rather than depletes, an influence that expands rather than contracts, a presence that creates rather than consumes. This is why your small act of kindness registered so powerfully on their sensors. In a world of takers, you revealed yourself as a giver. In an economy of scarcity mindset, you operated from abundance, even when you had little. That's not just rare, it's revolutionary. The revolution isn't the loud kind with protests and signs. It's the quiet kind that happens when people with authentic character get positioned where they can affect systemic change. When someone who treats everyone with dignity suddenly has the resources to build something, they build it differently. When someone who knows what it's like to struggle gains influence, they use it to ease the struggle of others. When someone who fed strays gets fed themselves, they don't forget what hunger feels like. This is the calculation happening in those rooms where your name is being discussed. They're not just evaluating what you've done. They're projecting what you'll do with power, based on what you did without it. The formula is simple but rarely accurate, because most people change when their circumstances change, but you've shown a consistency of character that suggests something different. You've shown that your values aren't circumstantial but fundamental. Let me paint you a clearer picture of who these people are that are coming for you. They're not necessarily billionaires or celebrities, though they might be. They're people who've reached a level where money isn't the currency anymore, where influence is measured in shifted realities rather than accumulated assets, where the question isn't what can I gain, but what can I create. They've transcended the usual games and are playing something entirely different, and they need players who understand that the real game isn't about winning, but about transforming the board itself. These are individuals who've discovered that surrounding themselves with yes people and performers creates echo chambers that eventually implode. They've learned that real innovation, real change, real progress comes from people who maintain their integrity even when compromise would be profitable. They've figured out that character is the only reliable predictor of what someone will do when nobody's watching. And since most of power operates in spaces where nobody's watching, character becomes the most valuable asset. Your demonstration of character wasn't just about being nice. It was about revealing that you operate from an internal compass rather than external validation, that you make choices based on values rather than opportunities, that you see humans as humans rather than as resources or obstacles. This might seem basic, but at certain levels of power, this becomes extraordinarily rare. Everyone's performing, everyone's angling, everyone's calculating. Then you showed up just being yourself, and the authenticity was so stark it couldn't be ignored. Now here's something crucial you need to understand about what's about to happen. The opportunity coming your way isn't going to look like what you expect. Opportunity to look like. It might not come with a big salary offer or a prestigious title. It might start as something that seems almost insignificant, a request for your opinion on something, an invitation to contribute to a project, a casual conversation that plants seeds for something bigger. Don't dismiss these small beginnings. The people operating at these levels understand that real change starts with subtle shifts, not dramatic gestures. They're going to test your patience before they test your capabilities. They want to see if you can engage with a slow burn rather than demanding immediate gratification. Can you contribute without needing credit? Can you add value without calculating your return? Can you stay engaged when the payoff isn't immediately visible? These are the qualities that separate those who can handle real power from those who just think they want it. The process might frustrate you at first. You might wonder why things aren't moving faster, why the promises aren't more concrete, why everything feels so subtle and indirect. But understand that this is intentional. They're watching how you handle ambiguity, how you navigate uncertainty, how you maintain your center when the path isn't clear. Because at the levels they operate, nothing is ever completely clear. Everything is navigation through probability and possibility rather than certainty. During this phase, you'll be tempted to force things, to push for clarity, to demand definitions, to try to accelerate what feels like a slow process. Resist this temptation. The timeline isn't yours to control. What you can control is maintaining the same frequency that got you noticed in the first place. Keep being kind when kindness seems irrelevant. Keep showing up with integrity, even when nobody seems to be counting. Keep feeding strays, even while you're waiting for your own feast to arrive. Because here's what's actually happening during what feels like waiting. Systems are being adjusted. Resources are being allocated. Pathways are being cleared. The machinery required to elevate someone from where you are to where you're going doesn't move overnight. It requires coordination across multiple levels of influence and opportunity. What looks like delay is actually preparation. What feels like nothing happening is actually everything being arranged. The people coming for you have learned that rushing this process usually ruins it. Dropping someone into opportunity they're not prepared for typically destroys both the person and the opportunity. So they move deliberately, strategically, allowing you to acclimate to each new level before introducing the next. This isn't them being cautious, it's them being wise. They've seen too many people crumble under the weight of sudden elevation to make that mistake with someone they actually believe in. And they do believe in you, not in some romantic fairy tale sense, but in a practical, strategic way. They believe you can handle what they're preparing to offer. They believe you can maintain your character despite the pressures that will come. They believe you can use power differently than it's typically used. This belief isn't based on hope or wishful thinking. It's based on evidence. The evidence you provided when you chose kindness in a moment when cruelty or indifference would have been easier. That moment keeps replaying in their minds, not because it was dramatic or exceptional, but because it was genuine. In a world of performed kindness, broadcast compassion, and strategic generosity, you did something real, something that couldn't have been calculated because there was no audience to calculate for, something that revealed who you are at your core rather than who you're trying to appear to be. That's what they can't stop thinking about. Meanwhile, you're going about your life, probably wondering if anything will ever change, probably fighting the same battles, facing the same struggles, dealing with the same frustrations. You have no idea that your name has become synonymous with possibility in conversations you're not part of. You don't know that someone with real power has marked you as a priority, as someone worth investing in, as a rare find in a sea of predictable disappointments. You're just living your life, maintaining your values, continuing to choose kindness even when it costs you. This unconscious consistency is actually your greatest strength right now. The fact that you're not performing for anyone, not trying to attract attention, not strategizing your way into opportunity. You're just being who you are, which is exactly what made you valuable in the first place. The moment you start trying to be what you think they want, you lose the very quality that got their attention. So your ignorance of what's happening is actually protecting the authenticity that started all of this. But soon, very soon, the veil will lift, the approach will be made, the door will open, and when it does, you'll face a choice that will define everything that comes after. Will you walk through as yourself, or will you try to become someone else? Will you maintain the frequency that got you here, or will you try to modulate it to what you think power wants to hear? Will you stay grounded in the values that made you interesting, or will you abandon them in the excitement of unexpected opportunity? The answer to these questions will determine whether this opportunity becomes transformation or just another story of potential corrupted by proximity to power. The people coming for you are betting on transformation. They're betting that you're different. They're betting that someone who fed strays when they could barely feed themselves will remember that impulse when resources become abundant. They're betting that character is consistent, that integrity scales, that kindness isn't circumstantial but fundamental to who you are. This bet they're making isn't without risk. They've been wrong before. They've invested in people who seemed authentic only to watch them transform into everything they claimed to stand against the moment power was within reach. They've resourced individuals who swore they'd use influence differently, only to replicate the exact patterns they criticized once they had influence themselves. They've elevated those who promised to remember where they came from, only to watch them develop amnesia the moment they arrived somewhere else. But something about you feels different to them. Something about that moment when you chose kindness, about the way you moved in that space when you thought nobody was watching, tells them you might be the exception they've been looking for. Not perfect, not saintly, not without flaws, but genuinely operating from a different source code than most people they encounter. A source code that prioritizes human value over market value, that sees connection as more important than transaction, that understands power as responsibility rather than privilege. This understanding is what they're really investing in. Not just your kindness, though that matters. Not just your integrity, though that's crucial, but your fundamental orientation toward life that sees other people as fellow travelers rather than competitors or resources. This orientation can't be taught, it can't be trained into someone. It either exists or it doesn't, and in you it clearly exists. It existed when nobody was watching. It existed when it cost you something. It existed when there was no strategic advantage to its existence. I must interrupt this transmission for just a moment. Are you really chosen? Prove it. It's easy to watch videos about chosen ones. It's another thing to put yourself to the test. If you're still here, that means something. But talk is cheap. Real chosen ones take action. That's why I built Destiny Engine. It generates personalized sequences that help you rewire betrayal into transcendence, turn isolation into sacred power, and transform their downfall into your rise. We are using the Dark Elite's own weapons against them, taking their declassified consciousness technology that programmed competition and scarcity and repurposing it to serve divine justice. You put on the headphones, press play and watch your enemies choke on the rope their own lies created. If you're done consuming and ready to prove you're chosen, start your Destiny Engine for $1 today, join the Obsidian Inner Order live checks, and watch divine justice accelerate in your life. Link in the description. The strategic advantage is about to reveal itself in ways that will restructure your entire reality. Not because the universe rewards good people, plenty of good people struggle their entire lives, but because occasionally, just occasionally, someone with the power to change circumstances notices someone worth changing circumstances for. And when that recognition happens, when that connection gets made, when that investment gets committed to, everything shifts. The shift will be disorienting at first. You'll go from being invisible to being seen, from being overlooked to being sought after, from having your kindness taken for granted to having it valued at levels you didn't know existed. This reversal will challenge everything you've gotten used to about how the world works. You've adapted to being undervalued. You've learned to operate without recognition. You've figured out how to maintain your values even when they seem to work against you. Now you'll have to learn something entirely different, how to be valued without losing the humility that made you valuable. This is the advanced course that most people fail. They finally get recognition and immediately start believing they deserved it all along. They finally get resources and immediately forget what it was like to lack them. They finally get platform and immediately start performing for applause rather than operating from authenticity. The very qualities that got them elevated evaporate the moment elevation arrives. Don't let this happen to you. Don't let the recognition change your recognition of others. Don't let the resources make you forget resourcefulness. Don't let the platform become a stage for performance rather than a foundation for service. The people coming for you will be watching for these shifts, testing whether your character was situational or constitutional, observing whether power corrupts you like it corrupts most people, or whether you're actually capable of wielding it differently. They want to believe you're different. They need to believe it, because they're tired of investing in people who disappoint them by becoming exactly what they claim to stand against. They're exhausted by the predictability of corruption, by the reliability of compromise, by the inevitability of people losing themselves in the pursuit of more. You represent the possibility that it doesn't have to go that way, that someone can gain power without losing their soul, that influence can expand without integrity contracting, that success doesn't have to mean becoming someone you wouldn't recognize in the mirror. This possibility is what they're investing in, not just you as an individual, but what you represent about human potential to remain human despite circumstances that typically dehumanize people. So when they come for you, and the moment is approaching faster than you realize, remember that you're carrying more than just your own hopes. You're carrying the hope that power can be wielded differently, that kindness can scale, that character can survive contact with opportunity, that someone who fed strays when they had little will remember to feed strays when they have much. This isn't pressure, it's possibility. The possibility to prove something that needs proving in a world that's forgotten. It's possible. Your good deed, that simple act of kindness that seemed to disappear into nothing, actually disappeared into everything. Into the quantum field where all actions create reactions. Into the network where all energy finds its way to corresponding frequencies. Into the space where character gets noticed by those who've learned to look for it. What seemed like nothing was actually everything. What felt like loss was actually investment. What appeared to be forgotten was actually being remembered by exactly the right person at exactly the right time. That person is preparing to move. The machinery is already in motion. The door is already being constructed that will open in front of you. The opportunity is already taking shape in dimensions you can't yet perceive. All you have to do is remain exactly who you were when you fed that stray. Stay grounded in the values that got you noticed. Keep operating from the frequency that made you valuable. Continue being the person who chooses kindness, even when kindness seems strategically stupid. Because that's the person they're coming for. Not some improved version of you. Not some strategic evolution of your character, but exactly who you are when you're not trying to be anything other than decent. That's the person who's about to receive opportunity that will seem impossible until it's inevitable. That's the person who's about to discover that sometimes, just sometimes, the universe actually does keep score, and your score just caught the attention of someone who can change the game in